Consumer research consistently shows that women make more buying decisions than men. It's commonly believed that women influence at least 80% of all household spending, make around 75% of decisions about buying new homes, and as much as 80% of decisions about groceries. But in the pure marketing space, and this is the interesting question, how much influence and say do women have over strategy, messaging, and ultimately output? I want to interrogate that a little further with Charlotte Nsubuga-Mukasa, who's head of Momentum Brand Marketing. Charlotte, a very warm welcome to you. Let's start with this. You are one of the driving forces behind this enormously successful She Owns Her Success campaign. What's the driver? What's the motivation? What are you realizing from an initiative like this?
Well, thank you so much for the question, Jeremy, and for having me on your show. So the driver actually started 4 years ago when we landed on a piece of global research that said women were very unapologetic about certain aspects of their life when it came to kids, but when it came to their careers, when it came to promotions, when it came to women athletes on the field, and when it came to sharing that with their loved ones, they suddenly shied away and felt that they needed to be humble because of what society had reared them to be and in terms of how they showed up. And we said, why should you be unapologetic when it comes to your children, but very apologetic when it comes to other achievements in your life, especially when it involves money, your careers, and let's call it the hard science of life. And we said, we've got to talk about what is under the iceberg, what's driving this. And we found out a couple of things. One, low self-esteem, in particular when it comes to South African women. And the next one was obviously a lack of self-confidence in the workplace, and also society and culture, and there's this very strong need to appear as if you're humble. So we said, can we use this as a seed to motivate us as a corporate to start helping us shift mindsets and motivate South African women to say that do not feel ugly inside when you stand up on a soapbox and you say, hooray, I did it. As long as you've got the street cred and the confidence and the substance to back up why you believe a certain something, there's no reason why you need to cringe. But we decided we shouldn't be naive. Just because momentum says you shouldn't cringe doesn't mean women are going to suddenly stop behaving this way. And we understood we needed to partner with psychologists. We need to understand how to bring in other partners to then derive what we now call the hashtag She Owns Her Success property, to start chipping away at these layers so that in particular South African women can own their success boldly.
I'm not going to call this a movement just yet, but you're certainly well on your way. But aside from the altruistic side of all of this, you're a business. Yes. And this also is important in helping position Momentum in the female consumer space. How is that panning out?
So as a business, when we look at our books, primarily the debit orders go off male accounts. Primarily our clients are males, which makes sense because, if you think of the traditional way of looking at things, the man is the head of the home, and typically he would be the one that would talk to an insurer on behalf of his family to say, we will buy medical aid, life insurance this way, and this is how we're going to structure money decisions in the home. But we found with the advancement of women taking on more careers, and we found with the advancement of COVID, which then led to a lot of divorces happening, we are starting to find that women are making more money decisions because they head up single homes, or they are starting to maybe even earn more than their male counterparts. So they feel and they're empowered to have a stronger voice around the dinner table as it relates to money. So we looked at our client base and we said, guys, it's shifting. It's no longer the man or the male that's making decisions with our financial advisors. It's starting to, be a 50-50 game. So what is our contribution in understanding women Do we understand their nuances and how they want to interact with the corporate and how they want to do business with us? And what are the soft things that we need to take into place when we do sell policies, when we do put a value proposition in front of them? Should there be a man or not? And does it matter? And we didn't have the answers. So we said, let's go get the answers by doing research in terms of how women think, but more importantly, find out how they define success, because as a brand, our whole essence is about being known as enablers of success.
Now let's move this conversation away from momentum and maybe look at the broader marketing sphere if we can. I find it astonishing that in 2022, so often consumer marketing ignores the nuances and needs of female customers. You're putting your money where your mouth is in terms of this respect, but how do you make this into something which is more incorporative?
I love the word incorporative because it also leads me to the term inclusivity. So when we think of a lot of, I call them falsehoods. The beauty industry has falsehoods in terms of how you should show up as a woman, but also when it comes to corporates, we've also had nuances that we've either inherited and we hold it in our disposition when we engage with women. So we have challenged ourselves to go and understand women through research. And through research, we are starting to change and shape our products differently. And by shaping our products differently, we are also talking about how we show up as a corporate when we are in front of women. And it does lead us to topics like pronouns, and then we'll sometimes say, is that a nuance we want to consider when we engage with our clients or not? And we might say, maybe not just yet because we don't have the know-how. And we then say, what do we know about women in terms of our know-how? And we know that we're good at advice. We're now learning how women want to receive that advice. We understand the nuances that help us to appear more receptive as a corporate, and we're putting it all together and building this approach that we're hoping 10 years from now will help us to be able to sell a business in a meaningful way. For now, we don't have the answers at Jeremy, because we're still on the journey in terms of figuring out the nuance that you speak about. But the whole essence of #SheOwnsHerSuccess is that it's meant to be a co-creation exercise with the people who we want to sell to versus the people who are already with us. And I think at the end of the day, it's going to be something that we keep tapping into to understand better and better and better. But the answer is not yet fully concrete at this point in time.
All of this, of course, Charlotte, does make commercial sense. So let's move beyond the pure ethics of this debate, if we can. And just generally, how can brands benefit from shifting the portrayal of women? I mean, it's a no-brainer, but what's the impact on brands? What's your view?
You know, I've done a lot of keynote addresses, in particular when it comes to women in sport, because people don't understand that it is a career. And it's interesting when you analyze how the media show women athletes. They will comment on their scarring, how they look, you know, in addition to them scoring goals, that they do comment more on the physique of a woman and how she shows up. And it somehow matters when it comes to her sports or the discipline of what she's trying to put out.
Unnecessary objectification, yes.
It is. And when you look at the same male team, they don't talk about necessarily how the man looks and how he's showing up, whether he's ready for the camera. You know, they talk about man of the match. When it comes to women of the match, people are very critical, even on social media, very derogatory. And we understand that has an impact in terms of how that athlete is showing up, and how that athlete shows up is either going to attract sponsors or not. So there's this domino effect in terms of how women are portrayed by brands, but also how we as society respond to those derogatory comments. And we're challenging the media as well as ourselves to start looking at a better way of telling stories that are still truthful, still credible, but there is less of an emphasis on how women are portrayed in the media, especially when it comes to their physicality, because it is actually impacting their mental health.
So just a final question then, and I like the line telling stories about the narrative then. Again, as a senior South African marketer who is looking after a big and influential brand, what's the call to action to the marketing community?
Sure. The call to the marketing community is one. When you do your research, don't only look at the hard facts. Take time to understand the psychological nuances of what you are researching, in particular when it comes to women. Understand it fully and make sure that you chip away at understanding how that affects your value proposition to the female market, whatever you're selling, whether it's products or services or whatever you're marketing. I would say start there. And then when it comes to the marketing community and how we show up, I do think that we owe it to women out there to take our space at the boardroom table and influence strategically, creatively, and commercially. We've got to be able to be the voice of people who are not around the marketing table or the boardroom. And we need to be remember that although we are in the boardroom, we don't make boardroom decisions. We go outside and we get the outsider or the consumers or the client's perspective, and we merge it together with our know-how, our technique, and our expertise as marketers to solve for X. And if we can do that, I think, and it's an old age saying that you go outside first and then you think internally. I think we're going to land up in a beautiful space. But I also, they talk about the chairman's folly. It's still with us. And whether we admit it or not, we keep bouncing back between that and, the right thing to do. So my whole thing would be that if you remember your essence as a marketer, ask yourself, why did we get into the game? Why are we pursuing this particular narrative? And remember what you stand for. All other things then should be grayed out, and use that as your true north, because at times the decisions can become tricky, especially when they involve money.
Such an important conversation to have, particularly as we come to the end of Women's Month. Charlotte, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.